Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's the creepiest display of intelligence that you've ever witnessed? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, listen, and ask for shoutouts. And subscribe.
We were studying and she recognized a young man from an anatomy textbook. She said it was from her third grade math book. We didn't believe her and made fun of her. So one day she showed up with that book. Same young man, totally different pose and environment. Obviously some stock photos. She still works in medicine but works with the police several times a year for a super recognizer screenings or whatever that's called. When we would go out, she would see someone and just go, this guy was at the lake 4 years ago when we were there. We all just stopped confirming with those people because she was always right and it was always creepy. My old cat, who was the eldest of 4 cats I had, was wicked smart. He was insanely clean. We had 2 large litter boxes for the 4 cats. He made the 3 younger girls copy his habits, and they used one litter box only for pee and the other only for poo. I swore up and down to my partner, who at the time didn't believe me he could understand English, but when I asked sarcastically to get the kitchen out from behind the drawer, he just looked at me, went to the drawer, had a conversation with the kitten, and she came right out. We had tried for hours. If my partner didn't see it with her own eyes, LOL. My husband grew up in a bad area, bad family, high school dropout. Because school was so bad for people with learning disabilities, he grew up truly believing he was stupid. I'm a writer, and he would never read, complained that he couldn't read. Not a lack of ability, but he apparently has that thing where you can't visualize in your head, but no word for 30 years ago, and I didn't even realize that was a possible thing. He just told me he can't see a story like I can, so it doesn't make any sense for him. He found it difficult and pointless. Then at 20 years old, he sat down and read a college chemistry textbook, left at our house in one evening, and literally taught himself chemistry. I was a gifted student with a full scholarship, and chemistry was where I got lost AF. I could not understand what I was seeing. I don't have to imagine with this book, it just explains. Easiest book I've ever seen. I was on holiday in a Turkish wakeboard park. They have some dogs there, which were strays, but living there in the park now. Super friendly doggos. One morning, we wanted to get up a hill for the sunrise. When we stepped out, 2 of the dogs slept in front of our house. They woke up and immediately understood what we were up to. They led the way up the hill. When we were up there, one of them was sitting down and staring into the sunrise with me. Nothing else. He just looked at my shiny orb in the sky. This dog was not led by food, companionship, or anything. He was just there, probably admiring the sunrise too. Nothing a dull animal would be able to do. I did a little time. I ran into a guy in there that engineered a fight between 3 unrelated parties. That part wasn't the creepy part, though good enough really. 2 of the 3 fighting parties were not fighting people, and he got them in the mix effortlessly. The creepy part was that in the roughly 1 minute before the fight kicked off, resulting in the block being locked down for 3 days, by the way, he explained to me point by point, and in close detail, what the administrational response would be, exactly who would be involved, who would be written up, injured, reassigned to different blocks, etc. He did this so that a 4th party, not involved in the violence, would be caught up in cell searches with contraband, which happened. A tattoo kit. That guy left the block with the 3 fighters, but never came back. He told me all of this stuff point by point like a grocery list, down to which guards would come and what their moods and reactions would be. He was in the cell next to mine, and he just kept laying it out, right until they locked us in. Working for a city in traffic engineering, we had a large map on a wall where we would place pins with colored heads to represent types of accidents from police accidents report. For example, pedestrian-related, property damage only, death, etc. Instead of bringing the stack of reports and working out each pin at an exact location individually, one legendary lady would go in and stick the pins from memory. This was not a small city. One engineer was incredulous and asked how she could remember so many. She became offended when he checked her work and found she got every one right. I didn't witness it, but I believe him, and I can't imagine how she did it. A guy I was friends with ended up working in a car yard. It wasn't a big brand one, just a small family-owned second-hand car yard. Guy did okay in school, wasn't a genius, wasn't an idiot. I dropped in to visit him at work after he'd been working there for about 6 years, and his boss called out asking if he could remember a car, and added the registration number. No description or anything. And my mate rattled off the car's details. The name of the person who traded it in, what they bought, and who bought it by name, but phrased it as a question. You mean the blue Toyota whatever with such and such that so-and-so came in with, etc.? This had all happened in about 6 months after he'd started there. He clearly found his place. For clarity, the car his boss was asking about had been traded and sold 5.5 years earlier. And no, not creepy like they're going to put you in a pit and make you put lotion on. Just a moment of realizing someone you'd known your whole childhood suddenly pulls a Rain Man out of nowhere. Yes, he's most likely on the spectrum. It's probably why we're friends in the first place. I met 2 people with electric and eidetic memory as far as I know. They both had the same habit of answering a question, pausing, looking upwards as if they're reading something in the air and then answering. One I met was in the army. My first meeting with him, he noticed my last name and said, "Oh, that's Japanese." Paused, looked at the ceiling, and then started speaking to me in Japanese. I told him it was a Japanese last name, but I was Mexican-American. Again, he paused, looked up, and then started speaking to me in Spanish. Later, he picked up quite a bit of German in just a couple of months. He was definitely polyglot. I believe he also became Soldier of the Month 3 months running, but was asked not to do it again. The funniest thing was he had very little social grace. He was a very good-looking guy and always smiled. People would approach him, but after a few minutes they would leave, looking at him like he was an alien. I have to admit, he could have been, but I still miss him. Worked with an Australian guy on Iraqi freedom in 2006. This guy was a comms tech and noticed every day around lunchtime, Baghdad time, the fiber cable link back to Australia would degrade, only 15 minutes at a time. He worked out over a couple of weeks to sunlight in a Singaporean data center shining through a window onto a router with a failed cooling fan. Would overheat the router and increase the data error rate, slowing the data link. The Royal Mumford, I doff my cap to you, sir. When I was a teen, was babysitting for a special needs group in my church. Kid was drawing what seemed like random lines on a piece of paper with random numbers attached to each line, and a random red dot or circle in the middle. She gave it to me at the end of church, thought it was cute, had no idea what it was. A few weeks later I realized it was a map of the surrounding area with all the streets and avenue numbers. She was 5. Grew up in a house with a female cat that had been around since my siblings and I were little. She would use combinations of trills and meows to make cat approximations of our names that were close enough that we knew when she was calling a specific sibling. If we didn't respond or start coming downstairs, When my mother would call us from downstairs, the cat would post up at the bottom of the stairs, trill meowing the person's name, or come into their room and do it in their face until they followed. Seemed perfectly normal to us, but I had friends that were definitely creeped out by my cat saying my name. My old cat Minos, over the course of a few days, arranged gifts for the family among the bushes in our front yard. 3 mice were arranged in a line in the back now with all their heads facing north, and 4 rats were arranged in a line in the front row with their heads facing south. One of the weirdest things I ever had to clean up. Not really creepy, but a guy I went to undergrad and med school with went through an entire semester of upper-level organic chem and missed maybe 2 answers. We had weekly 10-question quizzes where 6 out of 10 was great. Tests would be curved where 70 or so was an A. There he was every time. One person in the class got 100. Every week, 10 out of 10. He didn't seem to study much, and he liked his weed. Had highest score in our class on step 1 and step 2, just effortless. Friend's brother, he's an Englishman, a linguist, went with my friend to Norway for a conference. My friend went with to hang out and be a tourist. He didn't speak any Norwegian before he went. On day 3, he could read it and order at the restaurant and conduct their business in Norwegian. By the end of the week, he was fluent. He told me that Hollywood-style universal eidetic memories are BS, but some people have specialized ones. In his case, he can remember every single thing he has ever read, down to location on the page. He won't be able to tell you when he read it or anything like that, just the actual content. Conversely, he doesn't understand machines at all. Friend found him one day making coffee in the frying pan he'd just made eggs in because he couldn't figure out the coffee machine. This wasn't a personal witness, but was a known result of something that happened in Colorado back in the 90s. A cross-country runner from a high school in one of the small towns up in the foothills past Denver went missing. He did a standard loop around town to train, and it included some of the foothill trails. It turned out he was killed by a mountain lion, and it was a full-grown, fully healthy tom that they found guarding the body. They obviously euthanized it, but after investigating the lion tracks, they were able to see that it literally followed him on his loops. He'd typically do 4 or 5, and waited until he'd done a couple, so he was winded. It went against everything the state and wildlife game departments had claimed for years. Now we can acknowledge it's extremely heavy mountain lion country, and at the time, there was an ongoing study to prove how high their population was toward parks and wildlife for the state. The official PR stance had been they're elusive, they're afraid of people and your pets. Only an old, sick, or injured one would attack a human, and they stick to the deep mountains. When a fully healthy cat killed a 6-foot in-shape 16-year-old, it really changed how people were perceiving the whole situation. The non-fiction book, The Beast in the Garden, goes into the study of how they prove the actual huge cat population by a few CU professors. Nowadays, there's been hundreds of sightings on people's Ring cameras, and I myself had to stay cautious and aware when a few neighbors were posting video of them sauntering down driveways, napping in trees in their yards or along bike paths, and hanging out under people's decks, especially when it would be dark in a parking lot that opened up to a tall grass open space where they were known to hang out. When you hear a recording of their unique chirping, it's a little chilling to realize how many times you've heard it if you spend time outdoors here.
Hi guys, hope everybody's doing well. Just a little comment later on in the video, probably like the 4th or 5th to last story. There's one about poker, and if you hear me be like, "Whoa, Iife," I just didn't think it was real. Yeah, crazily enough, sometimes people make stuff up. Could you believe that? But anyway, if it is, I apologize, but you'll be the judge of it. Anyway, crazy displays of intelligence. Little thing about your narrator, I was actually a very accomplished, very successful, pub or bar trivia champion, kind of a keeper of useless knowledge before the internet was a thing. But anyway, that's it. I wouldn't say that's creepy at all, just I can remember stuff. Not like these people in these stories, though. Have a great day.
My son at the age of 4 to 6 could add letters. He was horrible with English. He's got severe ADHD. Well, he comes in the living room and says, "Dad, guess what H plus P is?" I said, "Hewlett-Packard?" No, he can add the numeric values of letters A through Z, as in A to Z, 1 to 52 uppercase and 1 to 26 and lowercase 27 to 52. He still adds words up and gets distracted reading. He reads numbers as words and words as numbers. It's strange, but really cool to see. My cat appears to understand tools at a glance. She can open any door in the house by jumping and catching the knob, apparently learnt by watching us. She'll often inspect the door for locks before trying. Then she realized she could apply this to the fridge. Uses her paws and head to pull from the side until it opens. Then she realized it wasn't worth the effort because we reorganized it in a way she can't easily reach the good stuff. Immediately stopped doing it. So in short, she apparently can reason to some extent if the effort is worth it, learn from watching, and apply the knowledge to other areas. Luckily, she lacks opposing thumbs. I was 19, tutoring a little boy after school in my town. Super quiet, always watching. One day I joked, "You're scary smart," and he replied, completely calm, "You touch your necklace when you were lying." I froze. I'd never noticed that. Then he added, "You won't be here long anyway." 2 weeks later, I moved away from uni. Still don't know how he knew that. I don't know if it counts as creepy, but my old music mentor is a polyglot who triple majored at Yale in his early teens. He has various sorts of command over 20 languages. When I was working with him, he got permission, unheard of for white dudes, to enter the inner sanctum of the holiest Zoroastrian sites in India and Iran to study their texts and eventually set them to music. I house sat for him while he was gone. When he came back, I asked him when he'd found time to learn the language because he's always busy AF, plus the whole dead language aspect. "Oh, I just studied on the plane. How are my cats? Don't be late to rehearsal tonight." I had another mentor who could extemporize anything on the guitar. Like he'd reference a passage in a violin concerto and just start playing a reduction on the guitar. Sometimes he'd transpose it to be in the same key of whatever I was studying. And I saw him play a piece from memory after hearing it once. He didn't glance at the score at all. The score was a recently discovered 19th century piece that he hadn't heard of before. This happened in a master class I attended. I grew up with a guy one day we were at after school finishing a biology project. We had a calculation for some random variables, 6-digit divided by 2-digit, like 179,485 divided by 67 or some shit, 67. I typed it in the calculator, and before I said it to the team, he gave me the answer. I knew this guy had a weird, it's smart brain. Didn't know the full extent until now, and I asked him, how the hell did he know that? He told me he did the calculation once as a 9-year-old, and also he remembered it because it was matching to his favorite number for a special car model, and it stuck with him. I grew up with this guy for 20 years and knew he was wicked smart, but it always stuck in my mind. He also told me that he studied his old sister's AP Bio book before he took the class for fun. Our teacher was a real hard-ass about consistent homework in that class. But if you passed the AP test, you automatically got a passing grade in the class. He never turned in a single piece of homework and got a 5 on the test. Dude was wicked. I used to be friends with someone who's a talented hacker. He mostly worked to find vulnerabilities in security systems to collect bounties in return. One day he showed me the less legal side of what he could do if he wanted to, and it was easy. Taught me a lot about how vulnerable devices, etc. can be. It all admittedly scared me a bit, as he could easily ruin someone's life if he decided to. I wouldn't have wanted to piss him off at any point, that's for sure. To be honest, I'm pretty glad we don't talk anymore, lol. A historian I know was scheduled to do an 80-minute talk about the Gulf War in the 90s at a university. He had done many of them before, but still had to have his notes in front of him during the talk, because it's just impossible to remember 100% of the information in that moment, and also mention it when it makes sense, or so he believed. When he shows up, he sees posters about an upcoming talk by political activist linguist Noam Chomsky, and it has the Gulf War on the poster. He decides to check this one out after his own talk, and it turns out that the university had made a blunder. Chomsky was booked for a Q&A. However, a lot of the audience expected Gulf War talk, so Chomsky says, "I can give you the textbook version before I add some personal remarks." He then goes on to give an identical speech in front of the historian, while he is checking his own notes to double-check if Chomsky is forgetting anything, but no. Totally unprepared to speak on this, no notes in front of him. My Doberman DeSoto, rest his soul, was probably the smartest dog I've ever seen. Probably doesn't seem like much, but it was a truly incredible sight that it didn't think dogs did. I was waking up on my couch of my in-laws right before the sun was up and just laid there in the silence. My boy DeSoto didn't know anyone was awake at the time, so he slowly gets up, walks over to one of the windows, props 2 feet up onto the window sill, and watches the sunrise. He didn't move. He didn't make a sound. He just stood there watching the sunrise, without a doubt, one of the most profound moments of my life. I could really see the intelligence in this creature. Dark Triad people are interesting, and they seem like me. If you notice one and talk to them about it in a friendly and non-judgmental way, it's amazing what they'll tell you, and the casualness in how they describe it. I remember one of them telling me how she would notice almost immediately the little things that would make someone respond positively and negatively. Then, she could pick up the patterns that people followed in their interactions with others, and how she could very systematically pepper those positive and negative triggers in to gain trust, attention, sympathy, etc., and how she could sow disfavor on others if it suited her. What's doubly weird is that these people will still try to use their tactics on you even after they've explained them. Doubly entertaining that they could be sobbing or screaming or happy one moment in feigned emotion. And if you call them out in private, a switch will flip when they realize you're not falling for it. My wife has a photographic memory. Many years ago, when we were dating, we were traveling with my parents, and a few hours later, while we were all staying at a hotel, my dad casually remarked that he wished he could remember the phone number on a pizza truck that had driven by us in traffic earlier because it would be nice to order a pizza. My wife instantly remembered the number, and he called and got us a pizza. She said that when she was younger and took tests at school, she would just visualize the book in her mind and read it to find the answer. Unfortunately, I'm the complete opposite. I have 2 wallet finders in my wallet in case one dies, and a tether with a clip that I attached to my pants because, as my 2nd grade teacher said, if his head wasn't attached, he'd forget it. Oddly, I'm not stupid and ranked 2nd in the nation as far as tests regarding creativity. It just shows me that we all have different types and styles of intelligence. Mine clearly is not a photographic memory. One of my close relatives is a very smart person, but has a hellish personality. She speaks a couple of different languages, has helped universities with forgotten ancient dialects, and has some pretty impressive talents with artistry. Only issue is that she's a diagnosed sociopath with psychopathic tendencies. We lived in the same house a couple of years ago. I was upset about something my mom did, so I went to her to talk about it. She said some not-so-nice things about the situation, and then concluded the conversation by getting eerily quiet. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You know what makes me different? I can be whatever someone needs me to be in the moment, and feel nothing of it. If you need me to be sad, I can be sad. If you need me to be angry, I can be angry. If you need me to be nice, I can try and be nice, but it's all a facade because I don't really care like that," and proceeded to laugh like it was some weird joke to her. I had known that this relative wasn't the best person, but any superhero idolization I had for her ever since I was a kid immediately disappeared after she said that to me. Creepiest show of intelligence I've personally experienced, especially since she tricked me into a lot of things so effortlessly. I'm actually the one who did it. People underestimate me a lot in life, and I have learned to use it to my advantage when the other person deserves it. I had a coworker who was an awful person and thought he was smarter than he was. He invited all of the young new people in the office, not the older people who were good at poker and could afford to lose money, to a cash game of poker at his place. Obviously, we were afraid of the career ramifications of offending a more senior person in the office, so we all said yes, even though we had all just graduated and had no savings and were still paying off student debt and really couldn't afford to be playing this level of poker. So a real scumbag move trying to fleece vulnerable people, especially because him and his wife were both playing in the same game and colluding. This never happened. Anyways, he was always very condescending to me at work and seemed to take the fact that I never corrected the idiotic things he said as me being stupid. So I played into that image he had of me during the poker game, sometimes visibly reacting to my hand if it was bad and I was going to fold anyway, accidentally stirring the bets and getting called on it to reinforce I had no idea what I'm doing. Calling to show a kind of mid-hand, if it was cheap to do, so I could give the impression I didn't understand the difference between Pot Limit Omaha and Texas Hold'em. In PLO, you'll get better seeming hands more frequently than Hold'em, but so will everyone else, so nearly the best hands will frequently not be the best hand. Eventually, I got what I was waiting for. The nut hand on a really promising board. He and his wife had been colluding in some hands to push other people out by pot raising several times, and then one of them folding, so nobody saw the winning hand, which is suspicious as hell and not very subtle. So I slow played the hell out of my nut straight flush and hemmed and hawed like it was a tough decision whenever they'd pot raise. They took the bait and kept raising until we were all in. Their stupid ink faces. When I turned over my hand and grinned at them like a jackass, the most satisfying hand of poker I've ever played, and the most money I've walked out of a cash game with. Also, my coworker avoided me at work after that, which was actually the best thing to come out of that game. One of my friends just remembers everything we've talked about, and he says it's normal with most people he knows. At first I thought he was just in love with me and obsessing, but he can do it with everyone. Like, I'll tell him something, and he'll say he knows, and then tells me the exact day and place we were when I told him, what else we were talking about, and how it came up. This is things like from 4 years ago. It's kinda nuts. Like, he has to pretend to not know things about people because people get weirded out. But ever since I told him not to do that with me, it's really great. Like, I can talk to him about a friend I haven't mentioned in a year, and he'll just know everything about them. It's like he just has the encyclopedic knowledge of everything anyone's ever told him. In my freshman year of college, I had a little group who watched movies on Tuesdays on campus. Afterward, we would usually meet at a coffee shop and hang. One of them was in his 60s, was retired, and was generally unassuming. We knew he'd been a professor at some point. One day, we were doing our thing in the coffee shop. He excuses himself and wanders over the other table, where he starts speaking some Eastern European language fluently. One of our crew was a pretty paranoid guy, and he half-jokingly accused him of being in the KGB, and it became a running joke. Not long after that, I bumped into our bilingual friend, and he says, "Don't tell that guy because he will just go wild with it." He then explains to me that he used to be in intelligence during the Cold War, and his job was to listen in on radio communications in Eastern Europe and Russia. He became a Slavic language professor, and that was how he ended up in the Midwest where we were. The same guy in 2003 or so used to hang on Slavic-speaking message boards on Yahoo and commented to us that he noticed that there seemed to be users talking to themselves or using numerous accounts per person. We thought he was nuts, but I thought a lot about him when the troll farms were revealed. I wouldn't say creepy, but maybe surprising. My son, 8, is gifted and autistic, and there are constantly things that amaze me. He can give a lecture on particle physics and do huge math problems in his head. He's currently doing algebra for school. The other day he told me that on his current favorite cartoon, there are 47 recurring characters outside of the main characters and the background extras. I asked how he knew, and he said he just listed them all in his head. This kid was also speaking like an adult at 2 years old and perfectly articulated full sentences. It was so shocking to people who first met him. They would say, "How old are you?" Nile crocodiles learn people's schedules. When you fetch water, when you do laundry in the river, when children play in the water. Humans aren't their primary prey, but they remember your routine, so when they feel like it, they'll be waiting for you before you even arrive at your usual spot. They don't make a fuss either. There's plenty of stories of them just quietly pulling one child in a group of swimmers under to drown, and nobody even notices until later. Africa has dozens of reported crocodile attacks per year, most of them fatal, as they're just crocodiles feeding. And based on the number of people that go missing around the water, only a minority of attacks go reported. Even if the river seems perfectly calm, something is probably memorizing your routine.